They called Group 1 to the podium with a bell that sounded like a clear coin dropped on marble. And for a hush of 10 seconds, the whole gate watched a man in a navy blazer hold my passport up to the light as if it were a counterfeit fresco. Gate E11 looked over the runway like a glass chapel. Beyond, orange heat shimmered on the tarmac and the Alps sat like a low gray rumor. It smelled faintly of espresso and hot rubber. My family stood in a loose formation behind me. 5 rolling suitcases in a defensive ring. And my mother's arm pressed a small square box of cannoli into her tote, as if pastry could be contraband. The bell chimed again. Signora Khan, the PA, snapped in Italian and then English, "Please approach." I was already there. I had arrived early because that's what an operations manager does. I'd printed the e-tickets the night before and slipped them into an envelope with everyone's passport, my mother's with its crisp Pakistani green, my sister Lena's with its proud new EU stamp, my brother Amra's slightly dog-eared one. On my phone, I had an audit trail of every confirmation number nested by date and card, each payment logged against my bank app, each transfer certified by SMS. I had the EU 261 regulation cached offline, and a checklist note titled Repatriation Rome to Karachi 11 with boxes for checked baggage, stroller gate check, special meal codes I'd filed and had countersigned at the check-in desk. It was the kind of order that calms me, the geometry of a departure. The gate agent, a woman named Sophia with a discreet winged liner, glanced between my boarding pass and the screen. "There is an upgrade," she said carefully. "It is very public." Her smile twitched like she was about to sneeze, but didn't. She flipped the paper against the counter and placed a fresh card down with the light click of plastic on laminate. The card's upturned edge showed the gold of a cabin far from the cattle call. "Business," she said. "Compliments from carrier." The agent kept her tone neutral. But the gate array passengers, strollers. A man clutching a tiny dog like a loaf tilted toward me as if a line had been tugged through it. Somewhere behind me, Umar laughed under his breath. I didn't pick up the card. "Publicly?" asked. "Yes," Sophia said. "Due to special circumstances?" Her eyes telegraphed a message she couldn't say in front of witnesses. Behind her, an airline duty manager with a tablet had drifted into position at an angle to the podium, like a rook in chess guarding a file. He was tall, hair clipped short with gel, name tag reading Paolo. He didn't smile. The circumstances had a shape I already knew. 40 minutes earlier, at the check-in hall swarmed with trolley carts and exhausted toddlers. Our group reservation had quietly split. Our family had booked on one RecordCon party of 5 the way I always do when I manage complex trips. It lets me transfer, freeze, reverse. It lets me file and escalate under one number. But at the counter, I'd watch the agent's fingers move and, in the reflection of the plexiglass, seen that record number change for 2 of our party. No explanation. A scripted phrase, "as per policy, ma'am." I'd folded the phrase into a corner of my mind with other tells. I'd slid my blue scarf back up my shoulder, nodded, and filed a mental note to request the change log. Now at the gate, seeing the gold card slide forward like a trophy. Something else flashed. Lena's earlier text to our cousin in the family group chat. A photo of the Spanish steps, their legs tangled in a stone amphitheater of summer. Umar's teasing at dinner when the check arrived. "Put it on the company card, Sarah. That's how this works." No. He'd thought it was a joke. He had also thought my envelope and lists were the harmless fussing of a planner. He'd never been in an ops war. "Take it," my mother whispered. Her hand was cool, fingernails square, jasmine and hand sanitizer following her from bag to bag. "Maybe it's a blessing." I kept my voice flat. "It's a lever." The word felt like a notch on a ratchet I had refused to turn until now. I was tired but not soft. The gate clock read 17:10. The plane door would close at 17:40. Tension ran like a tight wire through the air, humming just under the frequency of the aircon. The PA coughed to life and died again. A baby hiccuped. I tucked the envelope deeper into my tote, felt the stiff edges of the printed tickets, the passport stack. The notarized letter from our hotel manager confirming. We'd been delayed on checkout because the airline had moved our flight the day before, and the concierge had intervened to hold our room past noon. That letter had a blue stamp that had bled slightly where the ink met the porous paper, evidence of ink, not just pixels. That counted. Signora. Sophia prompted, pushing the boarding card gently to square it to my reach. I looked up at Paolo. This is compensation, I said, which suggests liability. He blinked. No, madam. It is a courtesy. Behind me, Umar's voice carried just enough. She always gets special treatment, he said. My mother shushed him too late. A man 2 rows behind us turned his head. There was a long minute where nobody moved. The gate area widened and narrowed with breaths. The smell of warm plastic rose from the belt barrier. Shoes squeaked. I could see my reflection in the glass, the blue scarf that had been my motif all week, small anchor against the fold and whirl of travel. I had taken this family to Italy with a spreadsheet and a promise to hold them through it. And here at the end, the plane door was a mouth that might shut on me alone. In my ear, as soft and cruel as the hiss of a steam wand, my own thought seems I'm not family. I didn't take the upgrade. Please note, I said to Sophia that I decline compensation until the carrier acknowledges breach. All discussions are without prejudice. She froze a fraction, then recovered and nodded, professional reflex smoothing the movement. I slid my phone across the counter with the EU 261 article open and highlighted. Under Regulation EC No 261 2004, Article 4. Where a reservation is confirmed and a passenger is denied boarding against their will, compensation applies. I am the lead passenger. You have evidence of earlier involuntary split of our PNR. My seat was moved once already. Words like filed, served, recorded are a kind of quiet percussion when done right. You don't slam them. You place them in sequence and let their echo carry. I had started the sequence yesterday. When the airline emailed a schedule change at 23:47 with a 7 o'clock check-in required, I had acknowledged receipt, cited the clause, and requested written confirmation that assistance would be provided for elderly passengers. The response was a canned line. I had forwarded it to my counsel Nadia, my law school roommate who went corporate but still wrote with clean bones and CCD the airline's compliance address. I had found 3 layers deep in their privacy policy. In the morning, the concierge, Enzo, who called everyone commander no matter their gender, had watched me scan the lobby printer and whispered, "Always type names on the line for witnesses," as he stamped my hotel letter. I had paid the hotel balance with my card and had the bank populate the transaction description on the same screen as the reservation code, then saved the PDF of my bank log with the timestamp. The mechanics of justice are unromantic. They are also warm in the hand when you've worked the machine. "Madam, there is no denied boarding," Paolo said. "There is an upgrade. There is reassigning without consent," I said. "There is a family split without consent. There is a group booking lead who wasn't informed of the change. And there is a public element," I added lightly, eyes flicking to the rows of waiting faces, "that your PR team might want to consider when the story is titled Airline Upgrades Woman, They Stranded Publicly." His mouth made a small shape of displeasure. "We did not strand you." I pulled the envelope out, and from it a thin standard issue paper I hadn't used in years, a letter of agency. Back when my father's health had been more precarious, I had drafted it for emergencies, authorizing me to act on his and my mother's travel matters. This one was for this trip, signed by each family member at my kitchen table before we left. Witnessed by our neighbor, Rosie, a nurse with a precise block hand. "You did when you refused to rebook us together yesterday on my request while our bags were already tagged. Forcing us to overnight in Rome," I said. "Documented," I added. "Filed." The words weren't magic. They were simply steps I had taken. "We complied with your change," I said. "You now comply with your obligations." Paolo's tablet lit, the blue-white of institutional UI. He barely moved his thumb. But I watched because I know that motion. the scroll to reach notes, the hook of mind catching on a tricky line of policy text, the flicker when impatient higher-ups ping a duty manager through the internal chat. Somewhere behind us, a boarding announcement for another flight washed across the terminal and dissipated like a tide. Sophia leaned closer. "If you accept the upgrade, madam," she said softly, "we can seat your family in the first row of economy, together. And when the seat map locks—" I said, "I can request," she said. "Request is not record," I said. I kept my tone broken in leather, not steel. "Right? The configuration, countersign, stamp." She hesitated, then reached for a thin pad that had once been called a flight irregularity form and wrote, in careful print, that the carrier would seat passengers con group in contiguous seats with specified numbers. She wrote the row numbers I named because I already knew them from tracking the seat map all week like a hawk over a field. When she stalled at "authorized by," she glanced to Paolo. He froze. The room breathed. He took the pen and signed. The ink soaked a fraction into the paper. Witnesses, a businessman with a loosened tie behind me. The woman with the tiny dog, my mother cooling her face with a pamphlet. The thing about public stages is that they're unforgiving and also a kind of cleanse. At the same time, I could feel another rope being tugged. There were other hands in this. The quiet PNR split. Umar's half-jokey, half-not jokes about corporate cards. A why that wasn't just airline sloppiness. A missing element. Somebody had tried to leverage my competence to carry them and then cut the tether when it seemed heavier than planned. A contact saved under V in my phone, a travel agency auntie called Vanda, who sometimes could pull magic, had gone silent this morning. A locked drawer in the guest house office I'd never noticed had been open for someone when I was in the courtyard. People drop tells. I collect them. We boarded. The aisle narrowed polite passengers into physical intimacy and apology. The cabin smelled like citrus cleaner and hot wool. My blue scarf slid as I reached for the overhead. My mother tucked it back with her ringed hand. Our row was contiguous, as promised. Lena caught my eye and made a face that was apology and exasperation at once. Behind the mask of family, she had always been the fairest. Umar avoided my look entirely. The air cooled. I felt the swish and lock of the door, felt the committed weight of the plane. The overhead lighting ran in bars like a runway. It would be hours before we were beyond the reach of Italian jurisdiction. And that mattered in a way few know unless they read the right clauses. I didn't relax. I used the taxi time to send for emails. One to Nadia, attaching photos of the signed irregularity form, the EU regulation highlight, and a timeline. One to the National Enforcement Body for Air Passenger Rights with subject: pre-boarding, involuntary downgrade, PNR split, investigation request. One to my bank's travel line requesting a temporary hold on the airline merchant for all pending charges since yesterday. My log attached, each entry annotated. One to the airline's data protection officer asking for the audit log of our reservation changes. Under GDPR Article 15, timestamped. I CC'd myself on a secondary address I use only for legal matters. Process is a rhythm. It steadies the hand. At cruising altitude, the hum settled into a steady, white sound. The window was a sheet of clean, bright over cloud. Lena leaned in. "He's embarrassed," she murmured. "I am not here to choreograph his feelings," I said. The plastic of the cup sweated on my tray table. The condensation drew a perfect circle like a stamped seal. "I am here to return us all." And to assert a boundary, I kept my voice soft. The woman across the aisle was sleeping. The baby had surrendered to the pressure change and lay on his mother's chest with his mouth slightly open, breathing like a tiny bellows. "He moved our booking, Lena." She swallowed. "You think he did?" "I think someone benefited," I said. "And I think because I carry the files and show no drama, they thought I'd accept the indignity and then carry it some more." I took a breath and tasted the sterile cabin air, the faint coffee note on my tongue. "I won't shout," I said. "I'll use process and receipts." When we landed, the jetway air was damp and metallic. Karachi at midnight is tire smoke, fried spice, and heat as dense as felt. The family parted into customs lines like iron filings around a magnet. Our bags came last, blinking past in a parade of tartan and black. My mother's wrapped half in cling film like a ham. In the chaos, a small drama unrolled. A baggage agent with a clipboard approached Umar and spoke in a low voice. Umar glanced at me and then away. The agent gestured to a doorway. I followed. The baggage office was a glass rectangle full of dust and swaying lanyards. A man in a white shirt with a badge that read Farhan looked up from a counter and slid a form over. "Delayed bag," he said, deadpan. "Filed for Mr. Umar. One carry-on remained in Rome. Contents, electronics and documents." Umar's face had that careful, rehearsed blandness of a man who hopes you will stop noticing him if he stops moving. "It's nothing," he said. "Just my—" He paused. "Papers." "Your papers," I repeated. The room was warm with the exhale of machines. Farhan's cheap wall clock clicked like a metronome. "List the items," I said. "It's private," Umar said. "Private items you flew in my group booking," I said. "Private items you moved under my record yesterday." I turned to Farhan. "Please include my name as witness on the PIR." He shrugged, then did. "Witness lines are things people skip." I don't. The list that finally emerged under pressure was thin but telling. A travel agency invoice. Printed for a preferred status service from a company in Rome. I took a photo. I sent it to Nadia. She sent a 2-word reply. Chain pull. In the days that followed, the evidence run built itself like scaffolding. I scheduled 2 calls and recorded them. I filed a complaint, then served notice by courier. The courier slip had a red stamp that matched the receptionist's nails. The bank froze the pending merchant charge and opened a dispute. I forwarded the wire confirmations for our hotel rebook and the taxi receipts. The airline sent their first real email, no candy language now. Just a request to discuss the boarding event at FCO. I declined a call and requested answers in writing. Meanwhile, I called the service listed on Umar's lost carry-on form, and a woman named Patricia answered with a voice like cigarette smoke and staplers. At first she tried as per policy. Then she tried your cousin arranged. When I read the invoice number and the merchant code and asked for the name on the card, she made a small mistake. She said Mr. Khan and stopped. "No," I said. "I am Ms. Khan. The card used was mine. Please send the authorization trail." Silence makes its own temperature. In that stillness, the AC in my home office clicked on and exhaled. I could smell the faint dust burn of first cycle. "We cannot," she said at last. "You must," I said. "Under GDPR, if you processed my data without consent, or we can discuss this with the Data Protection Authority and with the Airlines Council, whom I am CCING. I have already filed an Article 15 request with the carrier. I didn't raise my voice. That's for people without paper." 30 minutes later, a redacted PDF arrived, but not redacted. Well, the bounding boxes moved when I copied text. Underneath, it showed a sequence. A request logged to split our PNR with a note VIP override seat request. Companion to be moved to economy. Approval duty MGR Palo. Then a card number ending in 4412 mine. The sweat was cool on my back at the sight of my own digits used like a handle. I put the scarf down on the desk like a flag and began to build the platform. I executed a complaint with the national enforcement body, cited the airline by name, and attached the sloppy redaction with timestamps. I served a notice to the airline's local station with a copy to their regional office, recorded, delivered, and witnessed by a receptionist named Richu, whom I thanked as she initialed my duplicate. I filed an FIR with the airport police for unauthorized use of payment credentials. Sergeant Saqib, whose mustache has its own authority, took the statement with care and added the clause number where allegations. Transform to offense. My bank certified the freeze and sent me a letter. I had it notarized by a sleepy man under a fan, his stamp a satisfying thump on a hot afternoon. I don't love the theater of it. I love the way theater becomes ledger. The airline shifted from denial to negotiation in 2 emails. You were not denied boarding, they said. You were inconvenienced. Then, as a gesture, we can offer 20,000 miles. Miles are a currency designed to devalue. I responded with receipts and clause numbers and copied the Consumer Protection Council. Rectify, I wrote, in writing publicly. Nadia added a paragraph in her precise bones. Our client declines negotiated hush compensation. Meanwhile, family living rooms can be more treacherous than boardrooms. My mother sent tea and quietly, ? Lena came over with lemon cake and a list of apologies. Umar sent nothing. I waited. I don't litigate at dinner tables. But I am not shy of a public stage when it is needed. So when the airline invited us to a conversation with stakeholders at their city ticket office glass walls, a neat conference table, a wall-mounted model plane that gleamed like a tooth, I said yes. I invited Enzo by email to give a written statement. He sent a scanned note with the blue stamp. The inks bleed like a faint halo. I invited Farhan to send the peer. He faxed it like we were in 1998, and the paper curled warm and faintly. Chemical in my hand. I invited our neighbor Rosie to witness if needed. I wore the blue scarf, of course. It had become a thread through the days, a thing to see in the corner of my own eye to remind me of continuity. They let the antagonist speak first. That's always instructive. The airline station manager, a woman named Mira, who wore her blazer-like armor, read from a script. We regret any distress, she said. However, no law was broken. Paolo sat beside her, suddenly smaller, without the gate behind him, and the sea of passengers distracting from him. He kept his arms crossed. His watch was too large. Umar, who had brought Lena for optics, sat with his knee bouncing under the table until he remembered to press hard with his hand to stop it. Let's address the facts, I said. I laid out the boarding irregularity form. I placed the printed audit log with the weak redaction and then the same log unmasked, which Nadia had extracted by simply copying text. I laid the bank's letter showing the freeze with the charge and the merchant code. I placed the peer. I placed my letter of agency. I placed printouts of my emails and their acknowledgments with timestamps, like clefs at the start of bars. I placed EU 261 with the lines marked. I didn't speak in paragraphs. I spoke in small numbered sentences. I let paper land like stamps. A split was executed without consent, I said. Authorization was attempted on a card not offered. A compensatory upgrade was proffered publicly to obscure a denial of service within a family group. I did not look at Umar when I said family. I looked at Mira. Paolo cracked first. Not a confession, but a tell. We receive requests, he muttered. From valued associates. He trailed. From Mr. Umar's agent in Rome, Nadia asked. She had joined us, her hair pinned with surgical precision. She didn't raise her voice either. Mira tried to pivot. We cannot discuss other clients, she said. But our staff did not benefit. That's not the point, I said. The system did not comply. I slid one last paper forward. A draft public statement for the airline. 1 page, crisp. This is the correction you will post, I said evenly, acknowledging error, restoring miles and costs to our ledger, and describing the internal change you will make to prevent third-party PNR splits without lead passenger consent. I looked at Paolo, and you will add a note to your internal audit about the practice of VIP overrides. The room resized. The air cooled. The smell was a faint lemon from a cleaning cloth. There was a long, clean beat of silence where everyone looked at the table. We can consider your request, Mira said. Not consider, I said. Execute. I slid a pen forward, and then, because mercy lives alongside teeth for me, I added, you won't lose face for admitting error. You will gain trust. Umar finally spoke, voice pitched to reasonable. Is this necessary? He asked. They offered you business class. You could have just... I turned to him. The scarf itched on my neck. The aircon hummed. You moved us, I said softly. You used my planning and my card and then arranged to rise on my back. And when it failed, you thought I would accept the consolation prize and be grateful. I didn't raise my voice, but I felt the small metal click in my chest of a thing locking into place. "Seems I'm not family," I said again, and this time it wasn't a wound but a line drawn on the floor. He reddened. Lena set her hand on her knee, like a break. Mira picked up the draft and read. She didn't smile. "We will issue a statement," she said at last, "and reimburse the documented expenses." She looked at Nadia, measuring, "and review the override process internally." "Publicly," I said, because the harm was public. They posted it 2 days later. A modest square on their social page, a longer note on their site. "We aired. We've updated policy. We apologize to the Khan family." They wired the hotel cost. They transferred an apology miles balance that I directed to my mother's account, which amused her. They certified in writing that no third-party overrides would be executed on group bookings without lead consent, recorded and witnessed. I printed the statement and had my mother stamp it with my father's old address seal because he liked ritual. The bank released the frozen hold. The Data Protection Authority acknowledged the inquiry. They would audit the airline's consent process. Paolo's name disappeared from the station's staff page. I didn't ask where he went. I don't burn for the sizzle. I burn for the recalibration. At home, boundaries codified themselves into smaller things. I changed the shared travel folder permissions and removed Umar with a note that read simply, "Managing my own record." I filed a letter with the family WhatsApp group. The modern court of petty appeals. That said, from now on, any group travel I manage will be paid on individual cards, recorded and settled before departure with consent recorded. No exceptions. I revoked the spare keys that had wandered too far and had copies made of the ones that mattered. I updated the code on my home alarm. Lena cried, then laughed at herself, then cried again. I hugged her, then we both wiped our faces with the kitchen towel and folded it along its existing lines. In the weeks after Ripples, a cousin canceled a planned group cruise because, suddenly, transparency had a cost. A fellow traveler messaged me privately to ask for my EU 261 template. I sent it and a list of verbs: file, serve, record, escalate. The airline's customer team sent me a perfunctory satisfaction survey. I declined to answer and sent a copy of their own policy back with a noted. Enzo sent me a photo of the hotel's new sign at the concierge desk. "We will print and stamp your travel letters, just ask." Which made me smile because he'd learned from our tiny war. Farhan from the baggage office waved when he saw me in the terminal weeks later when I went to pick up a friend. He had a new clipboard, his name badge straight. Nadia and I had dinner on my balcony under a dumb string of light bulbs that hummed like bees. And we laughed hard enough to scald away the taste of paper. And me. I bought a new blue scarf at a little shop near Burns Road that smelled of starch and dye. I took out the envelope I had carried through Rome and took the old boarding pass from it and slid it into the new scarf's folds the way some people tuck prayers. The city breathed hot, then cool as the night turned. I made tea and brought a cup to my mother. We sat at the kitchen table, the fan beating the air into something we could live in. And we played our nightly game-naming mistakes that were avoided and justice that was done. I don't need the world to clap. I need it to comply. And I need the people who eat at my table to know the terms. There's dignity in that. There's mercy, too, in deciding what to let be. When we booked our next trip months later, short local, simply typed the names into a new record and clicked save, and felt that click in my chest again. Not a lock now, but a small, quiet release of a latch. Paper doesn't hug you back, but it lets you rest. If this helped you stand your ground with grace, share it with the person who carries the envelope in your family. If you want my exact templates for filings and scripts, reply receipts and I'll send them.